Picture this. You're standing on a riverbank, somewhere in the marshlands of ancient Egypt, 6,000 years before anyone's ever heard the words engagement season. A man kneels in front of a woman.
He's not holding a velvet box. He's holding a ring he braided himself out of reeds 20 minutes ago from a plant growing 3 feet away.
And here's the twist. It's not romantic. Not even a little. That ring is a receipt.
Yeah, you heard that right. The most iconic symbol of eternal love in human history started out as paperwork. So how did a plant bracelet meant to mark ownership turn into the thing you check your partner's Instagram to spot before you propose? How did a Roman legal contract become a 4-figure diamond and a knee on a restaurant floor?
That's what we're digging into today. The reed rings, the blood oaths, the church bans, the marketing campaign that invented modern love, and why your ring finger isn't actually special at all.
Buckle up. This one gets weird fast.
Here's the thing. Nobody tells you about the wedding ring. For most of human history, it wasn't about love. It was about property.
And before you get offended on behalf of your grandmother's ring, stick with me, because the ending of this story is actually more romantic than the myth, not less.
Every culture that's ever put a ring on a finger was doing the same basic thing your ancestors did with a fence, a brand, or a signature, marking something as claimed.
The circle wasn't a symbol of infinity. It was a symbol of a boundary, a loop that says, this belongs. And that idea shows up almost everywhere humans have lived.
Long before gold rings existed anywhere, people were exchanging tokens, carved shells in parts of Africa, woven grass bands across Asia, braided leather in early European tribes, all doing the exact same job.
Not, I love you, more like taken. Start in Egypt, around 4,000 years ago. Egyptians were obsessed with circles. No beginning, no end, same as their idea of eternity. So when a couple wanted to mark a union, they'd braid a ring out of reeds or hemp right there on the spot. Cheap and disposable and endlessly replaceable.
Here's the detail that always gets left out. These rings didn't last. They frayed. They snapped within weeks. Couples just made new ones, over and over, for as long as the marriage lasted.
So even in the culture that basically invented the ring equals eternity symbolism, the actual object was the opposite of eternal.
The eternity was in the idea, not the plant fiber falling apart on your finger by Tuesday.
Wealthier Egyptians eventually upgraded. Leather, then ivory, then occasionally silver for the elite few who could afford metalwork.
But metal rings stayed rare for centuries. For almost everyone else, a wedding ring was something you grew, cut and braided by hand the morning of.
And it gets more interesting. Archaeologists have found evidence that these rings weren't strictly about romance either. They marked a woman's marital status publicly, visibly, immediately, available or not, claimed or not.
Sound familiar? It's basically the original relationship status update, 4,000 years before anyone thought to put it on a profile.
But fast forward to Rome, and things get a lot less sentimental, a lot more legal.
Roman rings weren't gold. They were iron. Heavy, dull, industrial iron. Because the ring wasn't a gift. It was a binding document you wore on your body, permanently, where everyone could see it. The Latin word for it was vinculum. Translation, chain. Not a metaphor, a literal, functional description.
A Roman wife's ring represented her husband's legal ownership over her, her property, and, depending on the century, her freedom to make decisions without his signature.
Some historians argue the iron itself was symbolic too. Unlike gold, iron doesn't bend easily. The marriage, like the metal, wasn't supposed to.
Here's your first myth versus reality beat. You've probably heard that the ring finger is special because of some romantic vein running straight to the heart.
The Romans called it the Vena Amoris, the vein of love. Sounds beautiful. It's also completely anatomically wrong. There is no such vein. Every finger's veins connect the same way, more or less.
Romans just didn't have MRI machines. Dissection was taboo, and somebody guessed. And the guess stuck for 2,000 years.
That's the entire scientific basis for which finger you're wearing your ring on right now. A 4th century rumor nobody bothered to fact check.
By the way, not every culture even agrees on the finger. Ring finger placement flips between the left and right hand depending on where you are in the world, right now, today.
Germany, Russia, India, right hand. The US, UK, most of Western Europe, left. Same object, same meaning, completely different rule. Because there was never a rule, just a guess that got regional.
Fast forward again into medieval Europe, and the ring starts to soften. A little.
Enter the Posy ring, a thin gold band engraved on the inside with a short romantic phrase meant to be read only by the wearer, hidden against the skin.
As I have chosen, choose me too. In thee my choice, I do rejoice.
Genuinely sweet, genuinely private. The first real hint of the ring as an emotional object instead of a legal one. A message meant for exactly one person, worn on the outside of your body.
But don't get too warm and fuzzy yet. The church swooped in fast. By the 12th and 13th centuries, marriage had become a Catholic sacrament, and the ring exchange was written directly into the ceremony itself.
Which meant the ring wasn't just yours and your partner's business anymore.
It was witnessed, sanctioned, and regulated by an institution with very specific, very rigid opinions about who could marry whom and why, and under what conditions the whole thing could be undone.
So even the Romantic era of the ring's history was still underneath it an institution stamping its authority onto your hand, just doing it with prettier engraving.
And now, the turn.
The moment that actually created the wedding ring you're picturing right now in your head. 1938. De Beers, a diamond mining company, has a problem. Diamonds are not rare. They've got warehouses full of them, mines producing more every year, and a market that's about to crash under its own supply.
So they hire an ad agency, N.W. Ayer, and together they do something almost nobody had done before at that scale. They don't sell a product. They engineer a tradition from nothing on purpose.
This slogan, "A diamond is forever," 4 words, written in 1947, still running unchanged today. One of the longest-running ad campaigns in human history.
Here's the part that should genuinely blow your mind. Before this campaign, diamond engagement rings were not the default. Not even close.
Couples used sapphires, rubies, plain gold bands, family heirlooms, or nothing at all. Within about 15 years of this campaign launching, diamond rings went from a niche choice to a near universal American expectation, and the trend exported itself worldwide right behind it. One ad agency, one slogan, one generation. That's how fast a timeless tradition can be manufactured from scratch, and how thoroughly it can convince everyone it was always that way.
Myth versus reality beat number 2. 2 months salary, the rule you've probably heard for how much you're supposed to spend on a ring.
Also De Beers, also invented, also copy, straight out of the same decades-long ad campaign, quietly adjusted upward over time.
It started as 1 month, then it became 2. There's no financial logic behind either number. It's a marketing benchmark wearing the costume of a tradition.
But before we get to De Beers, there's a detour worth taking, because the Victorians did something with rings that nobody talks about enough.
The 1800s were obsessed with sentiment, not the soft greeting card kind, the intense, borderline morbid kind.
Victorian rings started encoding actual messages in their gemstones, literally. Take the first letter of each stone: ruby, emerald, garnet, amethyst, ruby, diamond, and you spell regard.
Couples wore coded love letters on their hands, and half the people who saw the ring had no idea it was spelling anything at all.
And it wasn't just romance. The Victorians also wore mourning rings containing a lock of a dead loved one's hair, sealed under glass, engraved with dates of birth and death.
Grief, love, and marriage all running through the exact same object, the exact same finger, the exact same decade. The ring wasn't just tracking who you'd chosen, it was tracking who you'd lost.
Now, quick reality check, because it's easy to watch all this and assume the ring is some kind of universal human constant. It isn't.
In a huge amount of the world, historically, there was no ring at all.
In parts of India, marriage was, and often still is, marked with a Mangal Sutra, a necklace, not a ring, tied around the neck during the ceremony.
In parts of the Middle East and North Africa, elaborate henna patterns painted across the hands and feet carried the symbolic weight that a ring carries in the West. A temporary, beautiful, deeply public marker that fades naturally over weeks.
In much of East Asia, historically, gifts of tea or paired items exchanged between families mattered more than any single piece of jewelry worn by an individual.
So, when you picture a wedding ring as some kind of ancient, universal human instinct, something every culture just naturally arrived at, that's actually not true.
What's universal is the impulse, the need to mark a bond publicly with something the whole community can see and recognize.
The ring is just one regional answer to a much older, much more widespread question. Western marketing just made it feel like the only answer that ever existed.
So take a step back with me for a second. In 4,000 years, the wedding ring went from a woven reed loop marking property to a Roman iron chain marking legal ownership,
to a private poem engraved in gold, to a diamond sold to you by a mining company that needed to move inventory. 4 completely different objects. 4 completely different purposes: reed, iron, gold, carbon. Ownership, contract, secret, marketing.
And somehow, every single culture that picked up this idea kept using the exact same shape to carry it. A closed circle, worn on the hand, impossible to ignore.
None of those origins are what you think about when you look at a ring on someone's hand today, and that's kind of the whole point.
Here's the thing about symbols. They don't stay loyal to their origins. They get inherited, reused, rewritten, generation after generation, until the meaning underneath has nothing left to do with where it started.
The ring began as a leash, a chain word cast in iron, meant to hold something in place. And somewhere along the way, humans just took it back, turned a mark of ownership into a mark of choice.
Nobody's forcing that circle onto your hand anymore. There's no husband's signature required, no priest mandating the ceremony, no company you have to thank for the idea.
You put it there yourself. That's the actual revolution buried inside this story. Not the ring, but who gets to decide what it means?
So the next time you see one, on your hand, on someone else's, in a box on a coffee table, you're not looking at 4,000 years of tradition.
You're looking at 4,000 years of humans quietly, stubbornly rewriting what a circle of metal is allowed to mean. And they're still doing it, right now, every time someone chooses one.
What other romantic tradition do you want debunked next? Drop it in the comments. I'm already halfway through researching the honeymoon.